Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Managing Your Jamstack Website Code and Deployments with Buddy and GitKraken webinar, here hosted by GitKraken. We're going to get started in just a minute, but wanted to let everybody know that we are live. We are ready to take your questions. Please use the chat box you see over there on the right, the YouTube live chat box, and we will get to your questions by the end of the call. So, with that, I'm actually going to stop sharing and jump back over here and let you see our faces. So hey everybody, I am Dwayne McDaniel. I am the GitKraken developer evangelist. This is my first webinar with GitKraken and my first webinar with Buddy. Majik, you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Maciej Pomorski. I work as a WordPress ambassador at Buddy. And to be honest, this is also my first ever webinar for GitKraken. So when we are on the same boat, really.
Well, awesome. So before we go any further, I want to do a little bit of housekeeping up front. Like I said earlier, we're taking questions through the YouTube embedded chat window on the right-hand side of the page. If you can't log in for some reason or you just can't get a hold of us, feel free to tweet at us. Use GitKraken, or at GitKraken and at BuddyGit with the hashtag webinar. And that's a good way to get a hold of us as well. And we will try to get to all of your questions by the end of this here webinar. Also, this is being recorded, and this will be made available to all of the registrants in the near future, and then we'll make it available to the rest of the world soon after that. So, what are we going to do today? Well, hopefully you came in with a pretty good idea of what we'll be doing because, well, what we said in the webinar. But what we're actually going to be doing is really three things. We're going to talk about a lot of things along the way. As you can imagine, this is going to take us not too long to do these specific steps, but you know, there's a whole webinar, so we got some time to fill. But this is the main gist of what we're doing. So if we look at this from a technology stack perspective, what are we actually going to accomplish today? Well, we're going to use GitKraken to manage our code. We're going to pull it down from a repo. We're going to make some changes, make some commits, show off what GitKraken can do for your local development practices, push that back up to GitHub, and that code is NextJS. The particular theme that we're using leverages TypeScript and Tailwind CSS. And once we get the code to like, all right, we are ready to do something with it, we're going to eventually get it to Netlify. But how we're going to get it to Netlify is we're going to tell Buddy to grab it from GitHub, build the site itself, and then push it over to Netlify for the end product. And I know what some of you are thinking, like, well, can't we just push it to Netlify directly? Well, we can, but that's actually one of the things that why we're partnering with Buddy here. And that's what we want to talk a little bit about, why CI/CD? Like, why are we doing not just a git push and deploy directly from our machine to our server? Like, why do we build a CI/CD pipeline? And I think that's really a question for you, Majid.
Overall, the problem with us people is that we make mistakes, and we do them quite often. So every time when we are doing stuff that we repeat, there is a bigger probability from time to time that we will make this mistake. And that's why CI/CD comes in. The CI/CD is shorthand for continuous integration, continuous deployment, and so on. But overall, it's automation. So we are trying to keep all those boring things, because if something is repeatable, it's boring. And we put it into our application. So we just push the button to deploy the boring stuff. First, we take care of the creative stuff, because this is for us. Then our application takes care of the boring stuff, like compiling CSS, Tailwinds, TypeScript, whatever. We can do so many things, especially that in the NPM era, we can do so many things with our code. We can remove unused CSS. We can even check check for typos. There's even an npm library for checking typos. It's really amazing.
Yeah.
So, but overall, it's because we would run it every time we deploy code. It would be just plain old boring. That's why we try to put it into some CI/CD application, for example, into Buddy, and it takes care of it for us, so we don't have to worry about this.
So one of the really nice things I like about Buddy and why I think it's a very good matchup with GitKraken is it's very visual tool. GitKraken, just to say a quick word too about GitKraken, there we see ourselves as the leader in that Git GUI and that visualization, and really we focus on 3 areas at GitKraken. There's over 2 million developers around the world who agree with us on this so far. Hopefully everyone on here is downloaded and already using. But we're trying to make Git easy for beginners and easier to onboard people. We're trying to make Git safer to use. If you can see what's going on, it's a lot easier to do things safely. And then we have some tools like an undo button, thanks to the way we implement Git, to let you just roll back. So there's a lot of safety built into that. And that's also going to get you to more advanced use cases a lot faster. It'll help you do things a lot more powerfully. But really it comes down to like the main reason people find us is they're looking for a good way to visualize things. And that's literally what you've done at Buddy. It's not just lists of YAML files. Like we'll see it in a second, but if you want to say like a quick intro, like what Buddy's all about with that.
Yes, I mean, if you ever played with GitHub Actions or something like this, it's a one big YAML file and you have to write it. I mean, you also can do it in Buddy, but we also have this GUI mode where you just, it's almost like Lego. You just pick the pieces. One piece it's called, let's say, compile CSS. Second piece is deploy to SFTP, and you just set the order in which they should run, and it's really easy. That's why I started using Buddy like 6 years ago, before even I started working here. I just liked it for its simplicity. And it's also the case why I started to using GitKraken, because I'm also a user of GitKraken for many, many years. And it's because it's so simple and I can see everything. This is the part that I mentioned about visualization of what is happening, especially at bigger project, because it's so important to see the tree when you have like hundreds of branches. It's really easy to mix everything, and with GitKraken, it's a lot easier to see what you are doing.
Excellent, man. So I forgot to finish my intro from earlier. So one of the things I do here at GitKraken is I oversee our ambassador program. Majik is also an awesome ambassador for GitKraken itself. He's been a fan of Buddy for so long, they hired him, and he's been a fan of GitKraken for so long that he writes awesome content for us, like this webinar, and does great things with us. And just before I forget it, you might see over my shoulder over here, GitCon. That's one of the other initiatives that I'm helping out with. We're putting on a conference in September. We're still accepting speaker applications for another month until July 23rd. So if you have something to say about Git, let us know, and we'll hopefully get you in there. All right. Let's get to it. That's one last point, I guess, is this is part 1 of 2 webinars on this subject. So today, as I said in our agenda, we're just gonna manipulate the code a little bit, pull it down, push it back up, set up a pipeline, get it deployed over to Netlify, and that's going to take us pretty much the time today. A lot more we can say on the subject, and we actually plan on saying a lot more about the subject, because next you can register for our webinar over on Buddy's website. So there's a link to this right above this video. It's talked about the second part. So go over there, register for that, and we'll get you the information to how you can jump in. So let's talk about the code itself. So here is a NextJS boilerplate that I have modified a little bit. I left the README alone, so if you want to go look at this, feel free out there and make it your own. But this is NextJS. So for those of you who don't know what NextJS is all about, NextJS is a project by ourselves, a React library to well, help build React faster and support things like TypeScript. And that's one of the reasons we chose this particular theme, is it does use Next, and it does use TypeScript. So for those of you who might not be familiar, NextJS is one of the leading, if not the biggest, adopted Jamstack tool currently going out there. This is from the HTTP Archive Almanac report from 2020. You can see NextJS is the lion's share of the market, and it's only growing, and growing pretty quick. So if you are looking into building Jamstack applications or decoupled systems, if you haven't already started looking at Jamstack or Next.js, this might be the time to do it. Like I said, the other reasons we picked this particular one is because it is TypeScript. TypeScript is pretty awesome. I know there's a lot of people have a lot of opinions about this out in the world, but typed JavaScript, meaning that you can have static types. So instead of just assigning a variable and it can be 100, or it can be a string, or it can be an array or anything else, no, you literally type it and say this is explicitly what it is, tightly controlled that, prevent a lot of errors, make sure that first name never is a number. In this particular case they're showing here. Today's webinar really isn't about that. Just wanted to highlight that this is a good intro to TypeScript, I feel. If you go look at this code, and it also uses Tailwind CSS, which is one of my favorite things that exist right now. I personally hate manually writing CSS. Bootstrap is awesome as well, but one of the main reasons I like Tailwind is actually on the front page. It's tiny in production. The less bytes we ship across the wire, the less energy it's going to take overall. And this is going to be a very good thing for the whole planet, I believe, in the long run. A lot of projects are going this way. I don't want to think it's just us that are doing this, or just Tailwind that's doing that. But that's a little bit about what we're talking about. We'll look at the file structure here and a little bit how Next.js works as we go through. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to clone this down to GitKraken. So this is GitKraken. It's open in a new tab. And I'm going to go ahead and clone this repo. And since I'm already connected up to GitHub, I can just say, all right, make sure I want to put this in the right place. Yes, my Next.js projects. And then this is the Buddy. There we go. And that's all I had to do. I don't need to go copy the URL. Since I'm already connected to GitHub with GitKraken, all you got to do is say go. It will take it a few seconds, and just like that, we are open. And now I can see all of my remote repos. If I was to do this by CLI, I would need to go throw another command that would show me my remote branches and what's going on, and then have to go back to GitHub and look at what pull requests are open. Here I can see pull requests that are open. I could open a new one. I can work locally here. I'm working in master, but if I wanted to say work in my image preview branch, just double click it, and just like that, it's pulled that locally, and I am ready to go. If I am doing some work, let me go back to master real quick, and want to create a new branch, all I gotta do is right mouse click it, and I can create a branch right here. And we'll call this one webinar branch. I'll just call it webinar. And there we go, just like that, I am now on my webinar branch, ready to make any changes I want. I can see over on the right, all the files that are in this project, source, pages, index has been changed since last time I took a look at this, or since last time this has been cloned, and it knows that. But that is a quick look at branches. But visually, you can see very quickly, and that's probably what everyone's eyes were drawn to in the very beginning, I have this really nice graph. Now, this is a pretty straight line because a lot of this is just me fast forwarding commits. So if I want to take image preview or my background CSS and just do an arbitrary merge here into I can start a pull request here, or I could check out one of these old branches and pull into it and say, all right, I want to fast forward and get these here, or just do an old-fashioned merge. Fast forward just throws it in the straight line. A merge will, of course, do one of these wonderful merges, and we see those all throughout the graph. But if I like click on this thing with a pencil, it's going to show me a diff view of what I had changed since the last time I made a commit, so I can see exactly what has happened in that change. All right, but we are set up ready to go here. Now this is a Next.js application, so one of the things I'm going to need to do is go set up my Next.js application. So change directly into Buddy, and this is a React application, so I'm going to need to npm install and tell it I need React DOM and Next. That's going to take a couple seconds, but that will get me up and running. But while we do that, I want to take a look at what files I actually have in here. Of course, as you can expect, I got Git. I got a GitHub. This project was set up specifically for GitHub, so there's some cool stuff in there, like their funding. And they assumed I'm going to use VS Code before I even started using VS Code. It is a React application, so I got packages, package JSON and package lock. Post CSS, which I'm not going to talk about today. We might talk about that next time when we dig in a little bit deeper. But I can see my Tailwind config. Tailwind's awesome because it's one config file that lets me control all my custom elements pretty easily. My TypeScript config file that lets me, well, set all my flags and the settings for TypeScript. Again, I'm not going to dig into that too much today. But where the site really lives is here in source, pages, got my layouts, got my styles, templates, utilities. Page we're really worried about today is our index. So if you've never seen a application in React or Next, this is a really brief intro to it, and you're going to say to yourself probably, hey, that looks a lot like just a bunch of HTML jammed in there. And you're right, that's what we're delivering up to the screen is HTML. But let's go ahead and take a look at what this looks like. I want to npx next dev, which is going to give me a URL. I can throw over here. Localhost. And there we go. We see exactly what it looked like. And which branch am I in? Oh, I'm on GK info right now. What does this look like if I go back to my master branch? I can see, you might not have caught that, but I got a hello everybody. The typeface changed a little tiny bit, but more importantly, Majik and I jumped down the page. So if I go back and check out something else with that magic of Git, shouldn't be a surprise to anyone on this webinar if it is. Welcome to Git. We can see quick refresh. Oh, looks like I already changed that in that branch. Let's go back all the way back to this one. All right, and we see, yep, there it was at the top in those big old squares. But I think that's enough about GitKraken for now. So I'm going to go ahead and set up the next part, and that is actually we're going to need to set up Netlify, have a target. If I go back and look at what we're talking about here, so I'm manipulating the code locally. We know what we're manipulating. I know where I'm pushing the code to, but we need a place for it to deploy and in order for Buddy to have a target. So let's go do that real quick. If I go back to, or I go over to my Netlify, my sites. I'm on a new site from Git. And for those of you who don't know Netlify, Netlify does an awful lot of things, but they originally were, a static site hosting tool. Like that's what they started as. They saw a need for GitOps. What am I looking for? Buddy. Here we go. And just like that, I can set up the project. Now, I don't actually want to have this run when it builds. Netlify can just go ahead and build and be done with it. And if it's a very small application that we're never probably going to make a change to, like a landing page that never needs an update and nothing complicated, that may be all you need to do. But for right now, we're just going to erase those. Go ahead and deploy the site to set up the environment. And this is called Ecstatic Euler. they have a very fun naming convention on these things. But in my site settings, just to make sure, because it really does love to build. You have to go in and say specifically, hey, don't build this. We're going to push a final completed build to you, and all you're going to do is host it in Netlify. And that's what we needed to do. So, now Majik, you have the code. We know what it looks like. We know what it does, basically. We know what it looks like, supposed to look like. I know what it looks like on my machine, and now I need to get it to Netlify, and I've set that up. But maybe before we do that, like, and I guess we'll dig into this more in the second part, the second webinar. Why wouldn't you just push to Netlify? Like, what are we missing from doing that we can't do with? Right, what do we need Buddy for if I can just do that on Netlify?
There are many reasons. First of all, this is the part that we already talked about. Using Buddy is in many ways much easier, especially the more complicated tasks you would like to run before pushing to production. Then, you can do everything, creating some custom npm commands and so on. It's possible, but doing it with Buddy, it will be just much simpler. On the other hand, when you would like to play around with more complicated deployments, like for example, first you would like to push to staging server, then run some automatic tests, then compare it to the actual production site to check is everything broken, so running some CSS regression tests, visual tests, maybe end-to-end tests, so a lot of tests in overall. And at this point, you can, for example, either wait for approval from someone from senior development. So you can do everything like this with Buddy. So you can build really complicated deployments, and in the moment you will be using more environments than just production and staging, then Buddy is like a must for you. I mean, with some work, probably you could write some scripts that would do this for you. But Buddy is doing this really not cool part. It's taking it from you, and you can just, like I said, if you like playing with Legos, it's like CI/CD for Legos. It's really the best. It's really the best way to handle those much more complicated tasks. And even now you will see how easy it will be to change, because first we're going to start deploying to Netlify, but in the end we're going to do some twist. So let me share the screen and let's start. Okay, so here we have an empty workspace, and we're going to create a new project. We already set up an integration with GitHub, so I don't have to worry about doing this. But as you see, there is already this Buddy GitKraken NextJS boilerplate. So this is the thing we are working on with Wayne. And at this point, it's already imported. We have it on Buddy. Now we're going to create a pipeline. Pipeline is just a set of actions that we would like to run, triggered by some action. So this one will be called deployment, because it's deploying code. And we have 3 trigger modes. First of all, we can do it manually. So every time when we will click the deploy button, it will deploy. We can use the on push, and this will work every time when you will push a change to a branch, as you can see here. Then this pipeline will automatically run, or you can run it recurrently, so you can set it to run once per day or something like this. It's really up to you. In our case, we're gonna use on push, and we're gonna connect it to the master branch. So let's add the new pipeline. Okay, and in a moment yes, now it's time to add some actions. In our case, we have to do two things. First, we have to build the application, so the thing that Dwayne did on his local machine. So running this first npm install and second npm run prod. And the second thing, we will gonna deploy code. Of course, as you see, you can do a lot of other cool stuff here, so it's really up to you what else you can do with your code. But let's start with a simple Node.js action. And first, we're gonna run npm install, and second, we're gonna run npm, of course, a typo, run build prod. Also, I have to show you this one cool feature, because you know how Node is constantly updating, and sometimes you can have problem with some legacy versions. It's so easy with Buddy to change the Node version you are using. As you see here, you just select the version number, and that's all. But we will stick to Node 12. So this is the first action. Let's add this. And the second action will be pushing it to Netlify. So we have this. And again, I already have set the integration with Dwayne's Netlify account. Mm-hmm. And if I remember, it was called aesthetic. It was aesthetic? Dwayne, sorry.
Yes, let me just go check real quick. ECST.
Oh, okay, I see it. Here we go. Okay, this is the more complicated part about those names in Netlify. And the one thing that we have to change is the directory we want to push, because we want to push only the dist folder. Okay, so that's all. And now we're gonna run the pipeline. Let's do it. We can also add the command, which, especially when you work with the bigger teams, might be very useful. But in this case, we will just... now we have a minute or two to wait, because it takes a few seconds, especially to install all the stuff from npm. I mean, each time I see the command npm install, I think that like half of the internet will be downloaded onto my computer.
That is one of the joys of working with npm is about half the internet every single time. So I see some other stuff over on the side there, Majik. I know we're going to get into Sandboxes next time. So before we dive into that, for anybody that came in late, we are taking questions in the chat box here on the right-hand side of your screen. If you have any problems with that, you can tweet at us, GitKraken and Buddy Git, our Twitter handles, and use the hashtag webinar, and we will try to reply to those as well. But I see like variable keys and assets integrations. I'm assuming that's like environment keys and settings for things.
Yes, exactly. And with really using environmental variables, you can like create universal templates and change only some parts of it with variables. You can do wonders with this. But we got it. It's finished. It's done. And as you see, you can check logs of each task. And right here, we can see the website URL, which I will copy because I would probably make a typo once again.
For sure.
Let me paste it. And it's working.
Hey,
it's working.
That is.
But now we're gonna do one more thing, because I said that it will run every time we will change something in the code. So I will keep my hands here, and Dwayne will push a small change. Maybe we'll add some hello world into the code, and you will see that it will run automatically. I will just go to the...
He's gonna have to take your word on on the code change because I'm going to take over control of the screen and go back over to GitKraken. So I was using VS Code a second ago. I don't actually have to. I can come directly into GitKraken and just edit. It's already editable right here. So right now it says hello everybody. I'm going to change that to on the webinar. And you know what? I think we should say that loud and proud. And this is one of the reasons I like TypeScript, or I'm sorry, Tailwind, is right now it's 2XL. I'm going to go ahead and make that 5XL. And I'm going to go ahead and save. And once I hit save, I'm just Command S, Control S on Windows. It's going to give me the ability to just stage the file right here. If I close this, I can either name my work in progress and just keep going and say, all right, this is what I've done. I have added hello webinar people. But actually, you know what? Really quick, I don't want to do it straight on master. I don't think that's the right thing to do. So for my work in progress, one of the cool things I can do is, well, I could undo all of it, what I've done. Oop, I misspelled hello. Gotta love that. But I can also stash this commit, come back out here to my webinar. And then go ahead and just pop that back in. So now I am right back where I left off. That stage change doesn't really matter because we've unadded it. It's taking care of that for me. If I go back to master, I can see that. Oh, check out master. Yeah, I got nothing there. There's no tree I'm working off of there. But if I go back to webinar, you see the dotted lines. I can tell I'm not working in there. And now, yes, now I'm back to it. And if I look in my change, yes, it knows exactly what I did. And I can, if I change multiple lines, I can pick what exactly I want to stage or what not to stage. But we'll go ahead and make this commit over here. And hello, yep. It just took the name from the work in progress. I can add a little bit more for the webinar. Didn't practice this part. And I'll go ahead and commit that file. Now I'm committing that to my local webinar branch. And of course, I wouldn't be doing my job as a developer. Oh, and you might notice like, hey, what is all this going on at the bottom of the screen? Pre-commit what? Yes, lent exited with code, and it took it a minute. It's still taking it a minute. And finally, well, no, actually not finally, because it's running even more commit hooks. Finally, it did it. So I wouldn't be doing my job as a developer if I didn't do two things. First, go back and check on, went the wrong way. Went back and checked on my local code. Yep, there it's exactly how I think it should look when we finally get it. And you see this is on my local host. But also, something weird happened there. I'm going to go ahead and do a merge right here. So back in my master branch, just like every time you use commit, you need to grab or be in the place where you're trying to pull things into. But instead of going and typing, merge, I have all these options. I can rebase webinar into master. I can merge it straight into master. I can fast forward master to webinar. Keep it in a nice straight even line. I have an interactive rebase. Now for this one change, all I'm going to do is merge it. We will get more into the fancy cherry picking and all of the other awesome things you can do in a future time in the next webinar. But here you can see there's my branch. There's the merge that's happened. But before I push it up there, actually, you know what? I'll start pushing it, and then I'll go and show you what I was going to show you. In Git, and one of the other reasons I really like this particular theme, and that's why I'm basing it off of here, is it's done a lot of work, a lot of pre-checks, as you can see, pre-rebase, pre-push. To tell Git, when you're going to do one of these actions, go ahead and do one of these things. And now here they're relying on the Husky library, which itself is really, really cool, part of type code, that checks a whole bunch of stuff. And that's why I took it a little bit. But it's all of these automated checks that I could do locally that I did not have to worry about, that they're never going to get to production. And it looks like, yes, my push happened. And with that, let's go back and look. And sure enough, you're in the last deployment, Majik. You're going to have to put your hands on the keyboard to go back out.
The push went through.
Oh, already. This just
Already,
happened.
yes, because yes, it wasn't a big change. So let's go and see that something changed. And of course it did. So everything is working. So every time Dwayne will change something in his code, I don't have to worry about it because it will be deployed automatically. And but yes, like I said, we want to show you something more than Netlify, because this is also the cool thing about using Buddy, or to be honest, any other CI/CD. You don't have to worry what will happen if at some point you would like to change your hosting, your provider. And with Netlify, if you are using it for CI/CD, at the moment when you decide to, okay, I would like to use some other hosting, you are in small trouble because you don't have any CI/CD, and that's why you should use something independent. So now we're gonna add one more action. First of all, we're gonna turn off this one because we don't want to deploy at two places at once. And we're gonna use our plain old SFTP. And we have it. And first of all, we're gonna deploy only the dist folder. Also, this source part here is interesting. So if you would use GitHub repository as source, you would only have access to the files that we have in the GitHub repository. And there is also a pipeline file system. Pipeline file system is all the files we have in a GitHub repository and all the files we created along the way. So, for example, the moment we run npm build prod, we create the dist folder, and it is stored in the pipeline file system. That's why we will be using it, and that's why the source path will be only the dist folder. Now I'm gonna enter my credentials to my SFTP. Okay.
Now we all know your password. It's a bunch of dots.
Yes, it's lots of dots.
Very
exactly,
secure.
that's
Very
my
secure.
password. And as you see, I guessed my password, so this is great, and I can already check what is on my SFTP server, and I go to the NextJS. Okay, everything is prepared. Let's add this action.
So just to be clear, this is pushing to your server, not to
Exactly.
Netlify.
At this point, this is how it looks like. It's empty. It's 403 error.
Okay.
So let's run the pipeline again. Let's upload everything from scratch because... Okay, and it will take a moment. But thanks to this, it's really easy to either deploy to multiple locations, because for some reasons we would like to do this, or if at some point we would decide to change our hosting provider, it's really easy. We are just changing one action and not the whole pipeline, because the rest of the pipeline stayed the same. And this is especially important when we have more and more complicated ones, because now it was just one action. Okay, we did it. I really like the speed of Buddy, and this is how it works on my server.
And sure enough, that website, that is not our Netlify instance.
Exactly. This is on my hosting, and changing the server just took me a moment. So, and this is really a useful thing, and every time you would have to change it, it will just take you a moment.
So this would be really good for, say, a dev versus a staging versus a live environment. So run your tests against the dev environments, like the npm library you talked about earlier, that can do typo checking. Back a long time back, I used BHAT, the Behavioral Testing Suite, for PHP, to do a similar thing, to write businessy gherkiny code to do some checks, and then like once it's across two places, that is where you'd start checking like, hey, are these servers the same, by doing something like visual regression testing. Now with traditional CI/CD, you have to insert all of that logic by YAML, like literally type it out or hope that they have some kind of pre-written something you can copy paste, and then manage all of that. Kind of like Git, it's holding a whole mental model in your head and hoping that you get it right. Not just you get it right, that everybody gets it right that's on your team that's ever going to touch this thing. I don't know if you ever tried to parse a YAML file to like figure out exactly what's going on, but those things get long really, really quick. That's one of the things I really like about Buddy's interface is it's like you keep saying Legos, it's the right word, or interlocking gears. So seeing how easy it is just to add that additional step of like, all right, push it here, not here. You can imagine like, okay, let's push it here, do some other things, now we'll push it here. And that is something you can't just do with pushing straight to Netlify. Netlify can do a lot of awesome stuff, and as a host, they're second to none in my opinion. But they're not ideally a CI/CD DevOps toolkit. They can do some of that stuff, and they do some really cool stuff, but that's one of the reasons I'm really singing the praises of Buddy. Well, that's what we wanted to show you today, folks. Hopefully that was informative. We still have time for questions. So far, I haven't seen any questions pop up. Let me go check my other window. I got 50 windows like everybody else in the world does. But I had a question, actually, and this is just, I guess, more promoting for the second part. Again, if you haven't registered for this, go directly above this video if you're watching this on our website, on GitKraken.com, and register over at Buddy.works, or you can just go to Buddy.works/webinar and register over there directly, and that'll take you to the right place. But what are we going to do next time?
Next time, we're gonna make it a bit more advanced. First of all, we're gonna show what are those sandboxes. And I think this is really the most killer feature in Buddy we have. Because we'll show you how to set up a server in like 1 or 2 minutes, and it will be up and running. So we will be able to create multiple staging environments. And when we will have all those environments, we're gonna run multiple tests, because this is the really fun part. And of course, we're gonna see how you can create pull requests in GitKraken, because those are also amazing. Did I miss something?
No, the pull request view is what I was actually going to talk about. I showed it earlier. I'm just going to take control back over here for a second. But there's this entire pull request section, which I haven't talked about at all, but I guess we could give people a really quick sneak preview. This is a full pull request that we can see on GitHub. I don't have to go into GitHub interface anymore. To create a new pull request, all I got to do is click a button, fill in all the things, which I'm not going to do right now because that's not today, part of today's webinar. I want to cancel that. Oh. I guess it's easier if I close the window because I didn't type anything to cancel. But yeah, I can start from literally anywhere. Like if I wanted this webinar, well, I guess since I already merged that, it wouldn't make any sense to do a pull request against it, would it? But I can still do many things. But that pull request view is killer. We're going to do some collaboration on that, make some changes. There actually is a bunch of changes that I made in the image preview. Again, I'll give you a little quick taste of what's coming, and one of the other reasons I like Tailwind. For this, I do have to hit reset. Many changes? Not really, but that background change took me literally 20 seconds to write because of the awesome way that Tailwind works. And yeah, we will look forward to digging into Buddy next time a little bit deeper. Doesn't look like we have any questions yet, so if you have any questions, we're happy to answer, and of course we're happy to follow up with you otherwise. If you want to reach out to us, just absolutely, Twitter's probably the best way to get a quick reply from us, and we'll answer publicly so everyone can benefit from that answer. And again, the recording for this will be available soon, and we will email everyone that registered as soon as it's available. And part 2, which happens on the 30th next week, same thing there. We will be recording that one and getting that out to all the registrants as well. And with that, if there are no questions, I think we just answered everything so thoroughly, Majik. Like, we could go back and talk about any of these particular elements, like the pros and cons of TypeScript, or the like all the amazing things that I'm discovering you can do with Tailwind that literally I had never really played around with before doing this project with you. But again, today we accomplished the 3 main things we did. We've used GitKraken to get the code, manipulate it, make sure that we're doing things the right way, show that we'll locally, connected it up to Netlify by way of Buddy, and now we're set up for part 2 to do some really cool stuff with Buddy. Not just, hey, build and push, that's awesome, but I could have done that locally, but the stuff that I don't want to do locally and the stuff I want to really automate, and the advanced stuff of like how we can collaborate using GitKraken as the tool to do that between the 2 of us. All right, well, with that, we will go ahead and say goodbye, and hopefully we'll see everybody online soon, and see you next week at the other part of this webinar. All right.
So, bye everyone.
Bye-bye. Don't forget about GitCon coming up on September